Hi there, and welcome to the Still Learning Podcast. I'm your host, Fortune Fowle, and if you're new here, welcome to a space that's all about progression, not perfection. The fact that we are becoming people, which means we have not arrived at who we're meant to be yet, but we are just getting to our destination. And so I invite you into this space and happy Still Learning Monday. Hi, guys. I am really excited for today's conversation to the point that I just want to jump right into it. And this honestly could have been a conversation had in one of my favorite episodes of this season so far, which is Taboo Confessions, my honest hot take on Christian gray areas. But this one, it needed its whole other thing. It needed a separate video, separate conversation, because we are about to get real, raw, and raunchy about purity culture. And yes, those are the 3 R's that I just used to describe this conversation, because it is one that I am really excited to have and bring forth from you guys. And I just really think it is something that when we talk about deconstructing your faith and this whole deconstruction conversation that we're having in the Christian community, or more specifically for Christians, I think in this area, especially for women, this has been a hot topic, because what we have learned and what we have heard and what we experience have been completely different things. The outcome has been different. We've been told many different things, and it has impacted our journey in terms of abstinence, purity. What is purity? What does it look like to be pure? Who am I doing this for God or to get a husband? Like, I think there's so much to be said about it. And personally for me, I didn't grow up during a time where I feel like it was peak purity culture. Like, when I started receiving purity culture rhetoric and talk, it was more towards the end of that whole era and that time. But where I was around for was when, if you guys remember, on Disney Channel, when the Jonas Brothers, Selena Gomez, Miley Cyrus, Demi Lovato, they all had purity rings. And that was a huge thing. And then, like, when they stopped wearing the purity rings, it was a scandal, because it's like, wait, like, if you're not wearing the purity rings, does that mean, wait, like, you know what I mean? Like, all their business and tea was out there. And so that was the time that I grew up with purity culture. And just, I feel like after that, like, we entered a very, like, hypersexual environment and space in terms of music, shows, like everything we're talking about now, everything we see now is so in your face, you can't escape it. You cannot escape it. We have lived in such a time and culture where, like, purity, what is that? Where you are actually more likely to be shamed for being pure and practicing purity and abstinence, like to be more considered an outsider and the odd one out now than you would have been like a decade or 2 decades ago. So just the difference and being able to kind of live in both of that has been really interesting, but also informative for me in terms of how I live out and practice my purity and abstinence journey. But I really want to talk about how I even got there and what impact and influence purity culture had on me, if it had any, and what it kind of frameworked for me. So starting off with the whole topic of sex, that wasn't talked about in my household. Like, what is sex? What is that? I don't know. I cannot tell you. Like, my mother and father very much stayed away from talking about that. I think my first introduction to sex, or even having the sex talk, like, it wasn't like my mom took me to the side. It was like, hey, I want to have this conversation with you. Like, I just was a part of a conversation with my sisters, having asked my mother about it. And I am the youngest, and I have a pretty big age gap with my sister. So I believe I was around 7 or 8 at the time when they were asking my mom these questions about sex. And I was just there. And I was listening, but I wasn't really taking in what they were saying or what my mom was saying. And to be honest, my mom didn't say much. She didn't say much. She just said, it happened, and you don't do this until you get married, and that's it. That was the end of the conversation. It probably couldn't have been more than 3 to 5 minutes, and that is all the exposure that I got to sex and what sex is in my household from my parents. So that's just to say that that wasn't something that was talked about, and something that was really like sex education. What is that? That wasn't happening for us. And so everything that I came to know about sex and what sex is and was exposed to in terms of sex all came from what I saw on TV shows and what I learned from my classmates. And let me tell you something, like, kids will be talking about that stuff at 5 years old in kindergarten. Like, I don't know where they were hearing that from, but I was hearing about this and from my classmates, from my peers, from a young age, and kids don't know nothing. So they're just telling you all these crazy, ludicrous things, and you're just like, what? And do what? And hands where? Like, all of those things I was learning and being exposed to, but I didn't have true understanding of it. And it led to me, I don't want to say not taking sex seriously, because I've just never been someone who's like, oh, casual care. No. That's never been my wave. It's always been something that I just viewed like is important and like intimate. And you don't just do it with anyone. That's just always kind of been my framework regarding that, despite not really having conversations about that in my household and how I should view it. I just always innately viewed it that way. And so for me, it wasn't something that was like you just rush into, but it wasn't something that I was like, yeah, like you're supposed to do this within the confinements and the covenants of marriage. Like, I didn't understand that either. I didn't subscribe to that idea either that was told to me as a child. I was very much on the, no, once I find someone who I love and care about and trust, then I'm going to go ahead and do it. Because why should I wait to marriage? Like, what is the point of that? Like, what does that really do for me? I feel like that's where purity culture failed me in that sense, because it never gave me a true understanding. It never told me why. It was just like, you just don't do this, you do this. But like, it doesn't even get into the mechanics of everything and the intricacies and how you even find yourself there. And when I am there, when I eventually do get there, what do I do? What do I do? I think that's one of the biggest things that women feel failed at, is that I did say myself, I was pure, and then now it's my wedding night and I don't know what to do. I'm scared. Like, this is supposed to be something I'm enjoying. This is supposed to be a freedom. This is something you told me, like, once I'm married, it's going to be amazing. It's going to be great. And I'm here and I'm more scared than I was before. Like, there's just so many nuances in the ways that the church just does not talk about it that has failed people. And it's like, if your parents are talking to you about it, if the church isn't talking to you about it, then the world is going to talk to you about it for sure. You're going to learn about it through the world, and you're going to be exposed to it through the world. And that's definitely not the framework that God has for us. But for me, a long time, I had the framework that the world had it in, because that's all I was getting it from. I mean, even when I learned about it a little bit from the church, I was, I want to say 14, 15 years old. And when they brought up the conversation of sex, if we can even call it that, it was based on this children's book. I'm 14, 15. So I'm like, okay, well, why are you guys bringing me this children's book? And it's about this girl and how her father gave her this gift. And it's about cherishing the gift and waiting till the right time, the right man to give this gift away to someone. Like, they did not explicitly use the word sex or what that even means, what that looks like. Nothing like that. Like, generally, that was the conversation that we had. And they just tiptoed around it. Like, and I think sex and just like in general cannot be something you tiptoe around. Like, you have to be direct and blatant about your descriptions of it, what it is, what it feels like. Use scientific terms. And maybe because I'm also in the medical profession, that I'm a very huge proponent on using scientific terms, but you have to use those. Do not sugarcoat it. It's so important, especially with children, because if they ever get in instances and situations where someone is making them uncomfortable or doing inappropriate things to them, like, they need to have the right scientific terms so that they understand why this is not okay, this is not safe, and they can go to a proper adult to let them know what is going on. And so I'm a huge advocate for that. and just tiptoeing around it and being like, okay, you should be able to read in between lines. No, I can't actually. I can't read between the lines. And so I didn't walk away from that conversation, from that book, with any deeper conviction about how I should be walking out my purity life. Like I didn't. I was just like, okay, that was cool, I guess, but I'm not buying it. I didn't understand why it was wrong. Like, why couldn't I do it? I had friends and people around me who were doing it, who were engaging in sexual intercourse, if we want to use the scientific terms, like, and I didn't understand why it was wrong. Like, why couldn't I do it? Like, why is this a sin? I don't understand. Like, okay, I do understand, like, waiting until it's the right person and someone who loves you. I do get it. I don't think it should be something you treat casually, but I don't understand why I have to wait until I'm married to do that. Like, I'm sure I'm gonna fall in love before that. Like, why do I have to wait? And if it's a matter of me, like, not getting pregnant, because I get that too, like, I'm not trying to have no teen pregnancy, then that's why we have birth control and condoms, and like, that's where we have sex education, and that's important. Like, in school, that's what I got. I think in 6th grade, 7th grade, we had sex education. They talked to us about those things, about having safe sex practices, how to watch out for things like STDs, HIV, all those things that are very important sexually transmitted diseases. And please, I hate that we are now living in a time where people are not getting those classes anymore, because sexual health, sexual reproductive health are conversations that are so important to have, not just when you're older, but at any age. Like, people should have awareness of these things, because that's not only how you protect yourself in terms of your health, but that's allows you to start taking the preventative steps and measures you need to take care of yourself and take care of your health, so that if you ever get to a point in your life where you do want to have a family and want to start family planning, you have already been doing the proactive steps to ensure that you are in the best position you can be to do that. And so I hate that we live in a time and culture where that isn't advocated as much, or people aren't being taught that as much. But that's where I got a chunk and a basis of good, I would say, sex education, is understanding that in school, when I was supposed to that as in the 6th and 7th grade. And so watching shows back then, like Vampire Diaries, watching shows like Bad Girls Club, Flavor Flav, listening to the music back then, a lot of hip hop, R&B, even now, like, very hypersexualized, talks a lot about that. There is no conversation of purity within these kinds and forms and mediums that we are being exposed to now. And so that is just to give you guys context of my background with purity and my first, like, kind of engagement with purity, and that the topic overall and where I stood on it. Like, I didn't subscribe to this idea, like, you save yourself to marriage, because there was no proper understanding of why. It just felt like, you just don't do this, you don't do it. And you know, when you tell kids and young people, like, don't do this, and you don't tell them why, like, you don't actually sit them down and explain to them, like, the benefits of this, where this is coming from, what this is rooted in, then they're just more likely to go against it. And that's kind of where I was at. And I wasn't purposely trying to rebel against purity culture. I just couldn't see the significance or the benefit of it in my life. So moving forward in my life, when did it change for me? When did I start actually subscribing and being a huge proponent of abstinence and saving yourself for marriage and all those things? Like, when did that happen for me? When did I flip the script? Like, what made it flip? If it wasn't the church, because it definitely wasn't the church at the time. It definitely wasn't conversations I was having in my household. It definitely wasn't the peers I was surrounded by with at that time. It wasn't because of what I was seeing on TV or what I was listening to. Like, none of, actually, all of that was against that agenda, if I'm being quite honest, or didn't aid in me subscribing to it. So what changed for me? And it wasn't an overnight thing either. Like, when I gave my life to Christ, I was about 15 years old. And so, though I gave my life to Christ, submitted to Jesus as my Lord and Savior, I still had yet to fully be committed to this concept of abstinence and saving yourself to marriage and sex being something in the confinements or the covenants of marriage. I had yet to be like, yes, I'm completely behind that. I wasn't convinced. I wasn't. If I'm going to be honest, I wasn't convinced. And it wasn't until I actually started to develop an appetite and a love for God's word that things started to change for me. As I continued to experience who God is and his character, I began to want to do what was pleasing for him because he had been so amazing and wonderful and loving in my own life. And I made that commitment to submit myself to him. So what does submission look like to him in this specific aspect of my life? And I had to first look at the scripture. I had to first be like, is this actually something you said, God? Like, did you actually say save yourself to marriage? Like, did you really say that? Is that or is that just something they're telling us? Is that biblical or church culture? Because at some point, purity and the topic of purity in the church, it wasn't something that was just on the basis of Bible or biblical principles anymore. It became a cultural thing. It became a way to shame people. Like it went so far from its original intent, because I do think the original intent was meant to be pure and doing this to honor and glorify God. But as most things, it lost the plot and it got muddy and it got confusing and it became constricting and restricting and made people resentful and really made it harder for people to actually walk with the Lord and than it was meant to be. And so I had to really begin to seek the Lord's matter on this, because for so long I heard other people's matters on this, the world's matter on this. But God, what is your thoughts and opinion on sex? Because one thing I know for sure is that you created this, and I know you didn't just create it for reproduction purposes alone. Like, you created this, and what you make is good, and this is supposed to be something that I enjoy, right? Like, you didn't create this thing, and you're also not telling me not to do this as a form of punishment or because you hate me, right? Like, there's a reason for this. So God, what is your take? What do you say about this? I want to know. I want to understand. And so when I came to read his word and understood that it is a fact true, that this is something that is meant to be within the covenant of marriage, that is how he called and designed it to be, I had to first accept that truth, right? I had to first accept that, okay, it is indeed true that this is not something that's supposed to take place outside of marriage, and it's within God's will to take part of this in marriage. And there is no and if or about that. Like, there's no confusion about that. We shouldn't be, as believers, if you call yourself a Christian, like, there should be no confusion about that at all. So I had to first accept that truth and acknowledge that. I was like, okay. But then I had more questions. It didn't stop there. I had to ask, okay, but why? Why specifically the covenant of marriage? And then that's where we start getting into conversations and understandings of soul ties. I know you real churchy, I know we all have heard of the term soul ties, and understanding that the acts and engagement of sex, which is a very intimate thing, and it involves both the mind, soul, body, and spirit. It brings you one with someone. It makes you one with someone. And I know this is something that someone may not believe, but this is how God created it to be. This is an act that makes you one with another person. Do you know what it means to be one with someone? Like, you are now one, which means who they are becomes a part of you, and who you are becomes a part of them. Their struggles and legacy and bloodline becomes a part of you, and vice versa. And I'm very much African, and so I am very much a strong believer, not even just in terms of biblically, but just me and myself, that you can take on other people's, especially the person who you marry, because this is binding. We are one now. You are taking on generational blessings, generational curses that you need to contend against. Like, you taking on bloodline things. okay, when you become one with this person, it is something you have to hold to the highest regard. Okay, you are taking on their trauma, what they have been exposed to, their grievances. That becomes a part of you. This is not just a hit it and quit it. There is a literal spiritual transaction, not just physical, spiritual, mental, emotional transaction that takes place in this moment. And when God is saying this is meant to be something that you do within the confinements of marriage, because he's like, I'm not trying to have you make these transactions with people and you're not able to bear the cost of that transaction. This is going to be detrimental to your actual spiritual life, to your emotional life, like to your mental health. Like, this is not for fun and games. Like, you really have to be considerate of that. And so when I came to understand that, oh no, this isn't punishment, this is protection. That's when I started realizing, oh, I'm not just doing this for me, or this isn't about rules. This is about protection. This is about spiritual health. This is about covenant and getting back to the actual foundation and root of marriage and the importance of it, like Christ and the church. Like, when I started actually allowing God to define these things for me and give me his perspective on it, that's what changed and flipped the script for me. That's what made me be like, oh no, like, I am doing this to please the Lord, but also this is pleasing for myself. Like, this is good for me just as much as it is good to him. And so that made me start really locking in on it and be like, oh Lord, I am committed to this because I see how much this is a matter of care and compassion for me and also the person who I will one day engage with. I think about marriages and people who are very open about their marriages where they talk about how having past sexual partners, how that impacts their marriage and how that is something they had to continuously work out and deal with. Like, what you think is just a hit it and quit it now is gonna be something that you or your spouse will have to go to marriage therapy for the next 10 years. For what you did for one night can be something that causes your spouse to have to be dealing with in therapy for 10 years. That's wild to me. That's wild. And it again just lets me know that, oh, this is not just casual. And the world will tell you it is. This is not casual. This is covenant. And when I locked in on that, guys, everything got locked in because I understand this is not just physical. There is so much that goes into this. When I locked in on that, everything else locked in for me. And I really committed myself to a journey of abstinence. And that started changing how I started living my life. That started changing boundaries for me and what I would allow, what I don't allow. Like, it really transformed me in that sense when I submitted this area of my life to him because I began to want it to look like his design and not my design. And the practice of self-control, it's just been something that's been so renewing, refreshing, but also something that like has brought me so much encouragement and protection in my own life. Like, I think, oh, the places that I could have been if it was not the Lord and the ways he had protected me in this specific area of my life. Like, and I'm not even talking about protection in terms of preventing myself from experiencing shame or anything like that. I just mean in terms of, I genuinely do think that, guys, if there are certain things that if God had not protected me from it, if he had not made me get committed when I did, if I did not lock in when I did, I think there'd be regrets that I would hold. And I'm being very honest. Like, I really do think there'd be regrets that I would hold. Like, I am so grateful that I never got to that point. And genuinely, I get it. I get it. Like, that's what I was missing for so long. And is the why. Is someone sitting me down and explaining to me like this is protection, what this does, what are the benefits and the consequences? Here are the consequences. Are you willing to take that? Are you willing to take on the cost of this? Like, what does it look like to break a soul tie? Like, all of those things. When the Holy Spirit downloaded that into me, when he walked that out with me, I truly was able to understand, God, this is your will, this is your design, and I get now why it's good and perfect. And then taking a step further, I then had to ask God, like, okay, is this just something for women? Because I'm going to be 100% with you guys. purity culture, when I had that conversation with my church at 14, 15 years old, there was no men in that room. There was no boys in that room. It was strictly girls. And I remember at the back of my mind thinking, do the men not have to hear this too? Like, I'm confused. Like, I'm pretty sure this is an act that engages two people. It requires two people. So why am I only seeing one people represented? And so I had to ask God, I was like, God, is there different rules? Because the way that it is being preached and practiced and pushed is as if it's just for women. It's as if it's just for me. But as I'm reading your word, God, this is something you say for everyone, both men and women. There is no one excluded. And I think that's another place where purity culture fell short, because really culturally for men, it really is hyper sexualized and really like put on a man in order for you to be a man. Like, you need to have these sexual conquests, which is ridiculous. But like, it is so pushed on men, especially when they're young. Like, is culturally heavily pushed on men, and culturally outside of the church heavily pushed on women to be pure and to be clean and all these different things, and to be a lady. Like, that is more heavily pushed on woman in culture. And so then the church, to add that additional pressure, but to add no pressure to the men, I found that baffling. And I had to ask God, like, God, did I miss something? Because I'm pretty sure this is for everyone. And the Lord was like, yeah, it is. Like, the Lord did not refute me on that. It is. And so I think that a part of it made it a little resentful for me in terms of purity culture, because I'm like, you did a disservice, not just to me, but also to men, to boys. Because one thing that I will give, and not even give it complete credit to, is that what it did teach me was how to honor my body and how to honor myself with who I am choosing or allowing to have access to me in this way. And it is an exclusive thing, and it is meant to be exclusive. It is meant to be exclusive, and you have to really show and prove your worth, because this is very much a worthy temple. I would definitely say that it really taught me to honor myself in that way, but just not anybody getting here. And I don't think that young men and boys are taught to respect and honor themselves and their bodies as much as women are. If I'm being really honest, like, I don't think they know how to hold their physical bodies in that same kind of respect and high regard. Like, where you place that, you shouldn't just be placing it anywhere. Like, you really should be conscious and think about it. Like, is this worthy? Is this something that I want to engage in? Like, they're not taught to treat it with such care and delicacy as I feel women are. And I think that's where there's really a disservice for young men in that aspect for it. And so when I had that conversation with God, he made it very clear this is for everyone. I was like, oh, okay. So I can actually start applying these same standards to a man. Especially if you call yourself a believer. Hold your other brothers accountable when it comes to this area, because this is a command for all of us to follow, not just women. Keeping yourself pure, honoring God in this way, and the covenant of marriage is not just God looking out for his daughter, he's also looking out for his son. So really having a true understanding of purity and what does that look like and how does that carry that out, and understanding the why and God's design behind it has been the best thing in my life. And it's not an easy thing, especially if you're someone who has a past of that and struggles with less. It's not an easy walk or journey, but the Lord definitely strengthens you and gives you the ability to do so. And I think what makes it a lot easier is understanding why God has it this way. And really seeing it's for your protection. It's because he loves you. It's because he understands the consequences of this. Not just what we visibly see the consequences, but the consequences that we don't see as well. How this impacts future generations, future marriages. Like, he sees what we do not see. And he's just as much involved in our present as he is in the future. And understand that this is coming from a place of genuine love and protection for you. It makes you committed to this walk as well. And it made me extremely committed to this walk. And I'm not kidding, guys. It has protected me in so many situations. And it also allowed me to view just love, romance, anything within that plane with a much more pure lens, and it's not muddled by lust. It really allows me to have the time to really understand a person's heart and their intentions. Like, you don't just look good, but is your heart good? Like like genuinely, it really allows me to dive into the character of a person, their being, their heart, and begin to develop this emotional intimacy and connection, intellectual intimacy and connection with the person before we ever get to physical. And that actually strengthens the physical in the long run if we really think about it. It's proven nothing to be a gift and something that has only made my life better and my relationships better, my relationship with my body better. Like, I'm not even like with honoring myself and my body and the temple that God has given me all the more. And I don't attribute this to a purity culture. I attribute this to a Lord who is pure and loving and kind and is guiding me to mirror that and reflect that in my own life. And so I hope that this conversation didn't step on too many toes. And I know it is a conversation that can be hard to really fully understand and digest. And it takes time, because I know for me, it certainly took time to really understand it and seek the Lord's design on it. But I do encourage you, if you're someone who struggled with the purity or the idea concepts of saving yourself to marriage, or have been wounded by purity culture, because there have been many of us wounded by purity culture and felt the shame and guilt that it placed on us, I want to know that you're free from that by the name of Jesus and what he's done for us on the cross. But also, I want to encourage you to really seek God's perspective, his view, and what he says about it. What does God say about it? What does his word say about it? How has he decreed and declared us? What is his heart? What is his vision? And seeking him to give that to you. And I would also love to hear your guys' thoughts and comment on this down below. Like, I would love to see the ways that you walk this out yourself, your experiences with purity culture. What does it look like for you now? This is a non-judgment zone, and we are all learning every single day. It's a continuous journey that we are on, and that is life in itself. I would love to hear from you guys in the comment section below, but I truly hope that this conversation was edifying for you guys and one that you enjoyed. And I will see you next week for another episode of Still Learning. Bye.